What's up, scholars? Welcome back to another video. Today we are in Whole Cake Island. I am not doing well with this arc. Not remotely well with this arc. Sanji? I'm sorry. I have cried more in this arc, and I'm like maybe 30 chapters in, and I have cried more in this arc than I have in most of One Piece. I think the last time I cried this hard in One Piece was back at the end of Enies Lobby with the Mary, and I think I cried harder in this arc than I did there. Because Sanji. Now I know why y'all have been waiting for me to get to this arc. I know why y'all have been waiting for me to get to Whole Cake Island, because y'all wanted to see me suffer. The moment I said that Sanji was one of my favorite Straw Hats, and he has always remained my favorite Straw Hat, or one of them, everybody's been like, oh, if you like Sanji, just wait for Whole Cake Island then. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I do now. This has made my love for Sanji just skyrocket in the most hurtful way possible. I am going to try to get through this review without crying. I was making notes for this review and I was crying again. So I am going to try not to just sit here and bawl, because I was bawling like a baby last night when I was reading these chapters. When I read certain parts of these chapters, I was sobbing so hard. So I'm gonna try to get through this review without crying. We'll see how far that gets me. I don't think I'm gonna make it. Let's go ahead and start, because there's a lot to talk about. I read up until 852, so I'm on chapter 853 now. I've read up till 852 to make this video. I haven't decided if I'm going to split Whole Cake into another 2 sections like I did Dressrosa, or if it's just going to be 1 section and then I'll do the next arc. If it's just going to be this emotionally heavy the entire time, then yeah, it's definitely getting split in 2 through, because I can't take this. So Big Mom's Kingdom in general is like this Alice in Wonderland type feeling, but like also like Hansel and Gretel type story, in my opinion. Just the way it is set up, the way people act, like the arrangement and the conditions that are set upon it, the type of people who live there. It really gives me that Alice in Wonderland feeling with like some of like the character designs and things like that, but it also it reminds me of like a Hansel and Gretel, especially with how Big Mom acts. Hansel and Gretel for sure. But so that's where we're headed. I mean, everything looks really cool. It's all made out of food. It's like a big old candy land. That's where we're heading. That's where Sanji is, and we get more information of how famous Germa is, that it is inspired these like stories and comic strips and all of this stuff. So Germa is very well known. They have conquered the North Blue. They've conquered other places. They've set themselves up as this huge royal kingdom who has this scientific prowess, which is what Big Mom wants. I'm so mad. Yes, I'm getting so far ahead of myself, but I was just thinking about it, and it makes me so mad. The whole situation with Pudding and Big Mom makes me so mad. I don't often just like feel rage for a lot of characters in One Piece, but oh, Pudding rose so quickly on that list. Okay, well, I'll get there. But that's why Big Mom wanted the Vinsmoke family, is for their scientific knowledge, their prowess, and their army. We also see Geji. Is how y'all said his name, like, there's a couple different ones. Some of y'all said that his name sounded like Veggie or Beige. So it's either, I'm just gonna say Beggy. The gang guy is married to someone who is very much like a Lola lookalike, which is her sister, because Lola, of course, the pirate she was talking about on Thriller Bark is Big Mom. That's her mom. Everything in One Piece connects. I'm not surprised by it anymore. I mean, I am, but I'm not at the same time. Yeah, so there's a lot going on. We have her there, but she's not Lola. She's her sister, and we have all of these moving parts going around, and we get Luffy and the others trying to get to an island, but because Luffy had cooked at the end of Dressrosa, they were out of stuff, so they were fishing. Luffy ends up eating a very poisonous fish and is in a very bad situation when they come across the Germa ship. So the Germa ship has Yonju, one of Sanji's brothers, and Reiju, his sister. That's when we find out more of how Germa is of a royal dynasty. There's still a royal line. Reiju decides to save Luffy because she is, she said her name is Pink Poison, and she can dispel or absorb poison without it affecting her. So she just, she does it by like kissing Luffy or like mouth to mouth, and just takes all of the poison that was in Luffy's body and heals him and saves him just like that. And after Luffy finally gets back up, we get the explanation of how they found Sanji, and it was because he finally got a wanted poster. Of course, the sketch led them to Duval, and I think it's funny how that still comes up. But once they came back from the time skip and he was actually physically captured on camera, they knew it was him and were after him. And it was Sanji's dad that raised the bounty on Sanji to change it to only alive. But Germa decides to leave them alone. The two siblings, they end up leaving to go meet up with the rest of the Vinsmokes, and Luffy and the others, they go on to Big Mom's kingdom. They find one of the many islands on there that's just completely made of candy. It's like candy, I think it's chocolate. And of course, Luffy and Chopper are just eating however much they want, and they're about to be dragged off to jail because they ate something they weren't supposed to. And then lo and behold, look who comes to save them because she's so sweet and innocent and kind. Pudding. Pudding comes, gets them out of that rough spot, asks them for tea or for like a snack or anything. She takes them aside. They find out who she is. She finds out who they are because Luffy cannot keep his mouth shut to save his life. Pudding lets us know that Big Mom has 85 kids. 85. That's a lot. 39 daughters and 46 sons. And 43 husbands. We also get a little information before I get further into Pudding's discussion with Luffy and them. Pedro is kind of off on his own doing some scouting, and we learn that he kind of has a history with Big Mom and Whole Cake Island and everything here, but he doesn't want anybody to recognize him. He's trying to stay on the down low, which gets brought up later in the arc. But yeah, so then we get back to Pudding, and she's telling them all about, how she's met Sanji before. It should have been a red flag. It should have been the very first red flag. I should have known. Because Sanji was still on his way to them. From what we know, he's only seen a picture of her. She wasn't on the ship. She wasn't there. Like, how would she have met him before that? Because in my mind, there's no way she could have. Which means she was already lying to them at the very beginning. And then she's saying how, I want that Sanji told her that he wanted to marry her, but he can't because he has to go back to his crew, which the latter half is a little more believable. And she fools Luffy and Nami being like, what? Sanji turned down a woman? Huh? If I'm being too harsh on Pudding, let me know without giving anything away, because right now I don't like her a bit. Her character seems very confusing and conflicting, but I don't like her. I think either she's messed up in the head or she's just that good of a liar and an actor, and she's just, I don't know. I don't know. But I think she was already lying to them then, because I don't see how there would have been a way for her to meet Sanji back then. But she decides to help the Straw Hats by giving them a direct route to Whole Cake Island so they can meet Fish Mom, Big Mom, and she was going to meet them there so that they could see Sanji and talk to Sanji, which, whole other lie. But as they're leaving, they get this like ominous message saying turn back that's on the ship. Luffy decides to ignore it and continues to go find Big Mom and Sanji. And Peckham's, which is who we believe left that message, is now missing. He got taken by Beji. I'm just gonna call him Beji or Bedge. I'm gonna call him Bedge. Peckham's got taken by Bedge and was carted off somewhere. They don't know where Peckham's is, and they decide just to go on off, trusting Pudding's advice to go after Big Mom so that they can find Sanji. But then we get Big Mom and her hunger pains, that she like throws huge tantrums and fits when she gets into a mood, and she's like just so hungry that she starts killing people and just destroying everything, even to the point where she kills one of her own sons. And they're like, oh, well, she can't really control herself in this state. Like, what does that mean? Is it like a side effect of her soul fruit? Is that like part of it is like she loses her own soul if she like uses it too much? I don't know. But Big Mom's motivations and everything, I'm still trying to gather bits and pieces, but she wants to create this fair, equal world where anyone of any race can come together. They can all be on an equal level. They can sit at the table at the same level. But to do that, she wants to drug everybody to make them all the same size, which is pretty much the same size as her. So she's wanting Caesar, which is why she wanted Caesar to begin with. She wants Caesar to create a drug that can enlarge people to her size so that they can all be the same and it'll be fair and equal. And she wants it so badly to the point where she actually makes a lab for Caesar and gives him like this deadline of how long he has to make this drug for her, to make this possible, her dream possible for her, even though Caesar is like, yeah, no, I can't do this. Like, this is, you know, that's kind of what he was working on at Punk Hazard, was with the kids and everything. But he knows that there's no possible way to get something like the drug that she wants, but he can't tell her no. So he's kind of stuck in a position where he can't really do anything. But he's stuck in a lab now with a deadline trying to get Mom this miracle drug that doesn't exist. So I might be a little fuzzy on Big Mom's dreams, her goals, but I think I'll learn more as we go through Whole Cake Island. However, Jinbei ends up stopping Big Mom's fits by bringing her whatever food that she was craving and like chunking it in her mouth. And after she calms down and settles down, Jinbei says that he wants to leave her crew to fulfill his promise to the Straw Hats. And we get this beautiful little flashback with Jinbei and the other members of the Sun Pirates and the other fishmen, where the faith he has in Luffy is just so heartwarming. When he's telling them why he's wanting to step down, why he's wanting to leave, and he's talking about how Luffy is going to be one of the ones to change the world, and he says he is still too young, but it is not any of the 4 emperors who will rule this sea. I believe that it will be Straw Hat Luffy. And he's thinking about post-war when they were on Amazon Lily and Luffy is crying and grieving over Ace, saying that he's too weak, and Jinbei's remembering this, saying he's gonna be the one to rule. Jeez, come on, Jinbei. And Jinbei is fully convinced that pledging himself to Luffy will bring true freedom to the Fishman pirates and to fishmen in general. And I love the Fishman's response to this. They are so happy and supportive of Jinbei. They want him to go. They want him to chase his dreams, to go after what he wants, because they realize that everything that he's done has been for them, has been for someone else. I love this. They said, all of your big life choices have been for the sake of someone else. You've done enough, Jinbei. We want you to live your own life now. I love that so much. That's so sweet and just so touching for them to do. So we know Jinbei is on Whole Cake Island dealing with Big Mom. We go back to Luffy, and Pedro is actually describing how, one, him and Peckham's used to be on a pirate crew together, which, cool. Pedro suffered a very devastating loss here on Whole Cake Island, but he also gives insight on the importance of Dogstorm and Cat Viper's decision to show Luffy and the crew the poneglyph. And because they made that decision, Pedro decided to give the Straw Hats his loyalty, to give them a fighting chance, to come to this island that he hated and had such a suffering defeat from, because of his hope and trust in them. These memes, I love them. I love them so much. The last time that any crew had been shown, anybody had been shown the road poneglyph on Zou, was Roger's crew, and Pedro says they see him in you. Like, we've been told the similarities between Roger and Luffy from the very beginning, and we're still seeing it now. I want to know more about Roger and why everybody thinks he's so much like Luffy, or why people think Luffy is so much like him. But Pedro is convinced that while they're there, while they're getting Sanji back, that they need to steal the road poneglyph, that they can get that to get the edge up on Big Mom and the others, so that Luffy can fulfill his dream to get him to Raftel. So Brook and Pedro end up going off by themselves on a little stealth mission to find the poneglyphs, while Luffy, Nami, Chopper, and Carrot go to get Sanji back. But when Luffy does get to Whole Cake Island, Pudding just doesn't show. She's busy. Her time's been taken up, and she just can't come to the harbor to greet them like she said she would. And now they're seeing like these apparitions, or like glass mirror reflecting figures of Sanji. So they're chasing him through these woods, thinking that he's just avoiding them. They fall into the seducing woods, right into the trap of Brûlée, this other captain daughter of Big Mom's that led them there. And as they're in there, they start seeing mirrors of themselves. Like, Luffy has a copy of himself arguing with himself, talking, and they're all getting really confused. They're running in circles. They meet Pound, this one big guy who's stuck in the ground, can't move, and they keep somehow running back into him. Nami realizes that the Luffy that is with them is not the real Luffy, and that it's a trap. So now they're having to face off against Brûlée and the whole seducing woods. Well, that's happening. We get our first glimpse into Sanji's dynamic with his family. His family sucks. That is the nicest way I can put it. Sanji obviously is not happy to be there. He's wanting to deny this wedding, wanting to just get it over with and leave so he can go back to the crew. That's still the first thing on his mind. But his father, Judge, comes along and basically forces Sanji into a fight. Sanji accepts. And I hate the manipulation, because after learning the story, hearing Judge fighting Sanji, saying, "Oh, you've come back, my son. You would deny your family?" Sir, are you serious? Are you serious right now? Are you kidding me? You are not his family. I experienced a lot of emotions in this arc. A lot of it was pure sadness. A lot of it was anger. And most of the times those feelings were mixed together because of Sanji's situation with his family and with Big Mom and Pudding. And it just... But yes, he's fighting Judge. And we get flashes of Sanji's backstory when he was a kid, and his brothers just beating him severely, making fun of him, and then his father coming in calling him a failure, saying that Sanji is the shame of the family. And Sanji, as he's fighting Judge, still is like, my hands exist to cook. He's still only fighting with his legs, saying that he's determined to be different than his family. I do think it's not just Zeph's influence. I know Zeph had a huge influence on Sanji and how Sanji was raised. I think there's a part of Sanji that uses his legs as a way of denying his family, just even if it's just a little bit, like seeing them use their fists, seeing them use their whole bodies as weapons, and he's delegated it just to his legs and dedicated his hands to cook, the thing that they tried to ban him from doing, the thing that they just despised him doing because it was lower than them. Dedicating his hands to that instead, just as a show of his own being, of individuality, that they didn't control him, they didn't own him. And when Sanji gets knocked down by Judge and he's on the ground, I might be misreading this panel, but it sure sounds like Sanji's like having a conversation with his kid self. And it hurts my heart when he lands on the ground and he's like, can I ask one thing? Is a birth father really that special? You don't have a single good memory of him, do you? And he says you had a very tough time of it, and he's thinking of his younger self. It's like he's almost it's like he's trying to talk to that inner child and be like, it's not your fault, like you didn't I don't even know how to say it, but that panel just hurts me so much, seeing how Sanji is almost like disassociating with his inner child to be able to protect himself, to be able to keep this anger and this rage so that he can fight back, so he doesn't give in to despair. And it just hurts. It hurts me so much. But of course, after the fight with Judge, this whole, well, aren't you my son thing goes right out the window as he's talking to Sanji, and he says, I haven't changed my opinion in the least. I do not think of you as my son. And he's just... Judge is in the running for worst father in One Piece. He's up there. I don't know, he might be at the top. I can't think of any others right now on just like in my mind that are worse than him. But then, of course, they put these cuffs on Sanji's wrist, Judge saying that they're the same cuffs these celestial dragons use on their slaves. Putting them on Sanji and threatening him, saying that if he tries to rebel, if he tries to leave, they're gonna blow off his wrist. Like, they're going to just take away the one thing that makes... They're gonna take away that part of Sanji's individuality. They're gonna take away that part of him. One of the most crucial parts, something that he cherishes so deeply, his cooking, and they're sitting there mocking that, saying that if he doesn't do what they say, they're gonna take that away from him. Seeing Sanji looking at his hands, at his wrist, thinking of Zeph, thinking of what Zeph has taught him, how Zeph would bandage his hands, and then seeing his hands just confined like that, and then him burying his head in his hands and yelling. And it's not just his hands that they're threatening. We find this out a little bit later, and I'll get to it, but it's not just his hands they're threatening. They're threatening Sanji with Zeph. But before that, we get Brook and Pedro doing their scouting. Things aren't looking good. We get Peckham's being shot by Bedge, and we don't get anything else. That is when we get the fight in the secret woods where they're all trying to escape. We get the information about Big Mom's soul fruit, how she can take portions of people's soul away, that the people there have to pay a toll with their souls, that she's taken like years off of people's life before, and she can just like reanimate things with like pieces of the soul. It is, I mean, it's a really interesting power, but also like that's kind of whacked, like kind of broken. Luffy ends up saving Pound, who this biscuit guy was trying to attack. So Luffy ends up saving him. Chopper and Carrot end up getting caught in a mirror from Brulee. But I'm just going to kind of summarize that part real quick because there's a lot of other things I want to be talking about. While they're in the mirrors, Carrot and Chopper find a way to trick Brulee and the others and end up outsmarting them, beating all of them, and capturing Brulee and I think one other to lead them through the mirrors, and they can kind of use them at their leisure and kind of do with it as they see fit as they're trying to navigate their way through to find Sanji or to find Luffy and the others. They're just going about their business there. The Viver card that Lola gave Nami ends up helping Nami win over the homies. They're called homies. I think that's so funny. She wins them over because the Viver card has like Big Mom's soul energy in it or something, so they can't really disobey her. So she uses that to her advantage, absolutely, to help fight, and she holds her own against Brulee. Ends up attacking her and taking her, like giving her some heavy hits with her weather, and is making everything rain so that Luffy can eat all the biscuits. And he fights against Cracker. I mean, I don't know. His name's Cracker. He makes biscuits. I don't know. But what ends up winning Luffy the fight is he eats so many biscuits that he's like huge, and he keeps eating and eating and eating until he gets a very, very full stomach and shows Biscuit the power of a full stomach and wins. It's so funny the way he wins, and like the gear, he still goes into gear 4th, but it's like a different form of gear 4th, and it's so funny. He wins against Biscuit, or against Cracker, whichever one it is. Golly, he wins against Cracker, and he ends up having to sleep off all the food as Pound tries to take them to where Sanji is. But during that fight, we get a very depressing bit of foreshadowing when Cracker is fighting Luffy, and he tells Luffy what Sanji would say to him if Luffy were to approach him now. And Sanji, and Luffy, of course, does not believe him. He doesn't believe Sanji would ever say something like that to him. And we get back to Sanji. We're reminded again of the reverie coming up. Germa, because they are royalty, typically have an invitation, but they may not get to go to the reverie this year because their attendance might be revoked from them, which I would not be upset about. But Sanji gets into a feud with his brothers because his brothers are just sitting there wasting and complaining about the food. Sanji, of course, has a different philosophy on that, and he tries to stand up to them. I forgot to put the meat out. Dang it! Okay, we're back. Started talking about food in the story and remembered I had my own food to prep for dinner, so we're back. But yes, Sanji has a feud with his brothers over food and how they treat food, how they treat the cooks who make it, and one of the brothers ends up calling up the cook to bash them for the food they're making, and Sanji can't stand it because this young lady who comes, Cosette, her name is Cosette, is apologizing for making something that they didn't like, but this dude tries to chunk the plate of food in her face, and because she's like a servant there, she just closes her eyes, prepared to take it, and Sanji steps in and protects her, grabs the plate, and says, "You would dare sink that low, you dare to leave a mark on a woman's face." And then he proceeds to name the food that she had made and get it off the floor despite her protest gets it off the floor and eats it, and then compliments her about the taste. And then, because Sanji defied him, this brother, I think his name is Niji. Niji goes to kick Sanji, but because Sanji's not married yet, they shouldn't touch him, meaning that they plan on beating him after he gets married, which is what their full intent is. Niji holds back, and I love Sanji's speech and how he stands up for himself, saying that he's embarrassed to be associated with the Vinsmoke name because everything they stand for, it goes against all of his ideals. And seeing the Vinsmoke's family compared to Zeph really shows me just how it gives so much insight into Sanji's character, the way he is, why he is the way he is. It makes me love him so much more. But of course, that's when Judge comes in and brings up Zeph and threatens Zeph. And of course, as they're naming where Zeph is, that, you know, they know what stretch of sea he's on, they know the name of the restaurant, they know where it's located right now. And Sanji's just getting paler and paler because he's so afraid of losing Zeph, because he keeps saying in this arc that Zeph is his father, Zeph is his real father, and I can't. How Sanji claims Zeph as his dad, as his father in this arc just hurts. And to see the man that he calls father being threatened because of something he could do, because of his actions, just devastates him. And then we get more flashbacks with Zeph and Sanji. We get Sanji being so happy to be a chef, to be beside Zeph. We see Zeph teaching him, and after that Sanji just kind of falls compliant because he knows he can't do anything, because if he does anything, his dad's gonna die. And then as he's leaving, he ends up finding Cosette, which the brothers decided to beat to a pulp anyways, and then they have the audacity to say it's Sanji's fault that she's in that condition. They have the audacity to blame Sanji for that when it was a grown man making that decision. Sanji, of course, wants to get Cosette help, and then, what was his name? The one brother, Yonji, I think? Whatever. The one that Sanji punched earlier, which I was very happy about. He takes him behind this secret door that they could never get in when they were younger, but now they can, and it is a room full of just Germa soldiers. It is soldiers that have been cloned and made using the science that, one, that Germa has, but that Vegapunk has, because they worked with Vegapunk. How many people does Vegapunk work with? I mean, I'm just curious. We still don't know Vegapunk, but this man's been everywhere. He's worked with everyone, good and bad. Like, anyways, Vegapunk was working with them until it got defunded and cut off, and then Germa stole the technology anyways and replicated it. And as Sanji is hearing all this, he has to sit down saying that he's going to be sick because just the sight of all these clones, of all these like artificial humans being made for the sole purpose of fighting, that his family is building and making, this army that they're creating, is just so revolting to him that he just has to look away. And then Niji comes in and Sanji just kicks him right in the face for what he did to Cosette, and I'm so happy. I was so glad he did that. Of course, they gang up on Sanji after this and start beating him, and because his brothers are like these manufactured, like artificially enhanced humans, they have an upper hand. And that's when we get Sanji's backstory, where he was so unlike his brothers. He wasn't as strong as them, wasn't as tough as them, was always falling behind in competitions or training that their father was having them do, and they would just abuse this poor boy so horribly. and Sanji would be taking care of animals and just being happy, cooking for like the rats in the building or something, and they would do everything they could to make him miserable. And then as they're doing more, as his father's doing more testing, and they're talking about the manipulated bloodlines and everything, this scientist is like, well, I'm afraid to say this, but he's got to be a failure. A failure. He's nothing but a human. And being human is somehow the greatest insult to Sanji's father. And Judge mistreats him so horribly, banning him from cooking, forcing him into all of this arduous practice and training, saying that because Sanji has no talent, he has to work harder than everybody else. He has to do everything he can to bring glory to him, to Judge. And it gets to the point where Sanji is just constantly just beaten and battered by his siblings, by his father. And his father calls him a waste of life. To the point he fakes Sanji's death to trap him in a dungeon so that no one will know about the failure, his failure son. Puts that helmet on him and locks him in a dungeon for months, seeing baby Sanji, little Sanji, screaming for help, begging for someone to come help him, to come let him out, and no one coming to his aid, then leaving him in a dungeon. With everything Sanji went through, gosh, that could have very well been Sanji's origin, like villain origin story, but he somehow has one of the darkest stories and came out one of the sweetest people, very kind and self-sacrificial. And then we get, as Sanji's in the dungeon, he thinks about when he would go visit his mom, because of course his mom is dead, because he can't catch a break, and he's going through the rain, he's slipping and sliding, and he's doing everything he can to get to his mom in secret. His mom is amazing. Sanji cooked for her, and it might not have been the best food, but she ate it and she smiled and said it was delicious, that she loved it, and spent time with her son, who was just a human, and loved him. And his mom helped inspire and keep that love for cooking going for Sanji, to the point where in the dungeon he's asking for books of like kitchen utensils, something to do with cooking, and that is where he discovers the All Blue, locked in a dungeon where he had no hope, no anything, no chance of living a life, just locked in a cage, trapped, scorned, abused and left behind, finding a glimmer of hope. It's no wonder he clung to that so fiercely after he left. When he met Zeph, it's no wonder he attacked Zeph the moment that he thought he was gonna be left behind or killed, because that was his glimmering hope. That was his last hope that he got at the very darkest moments in his life. The All Blue. If Sanji does not find the All Blue by the end of One Piece, I am going to be distraught. But of course, his brothers and they find him down in the dungeon. Of course, they make fun of him and they beat him even more. And Reiju is the one who has always kind of helped Sanji secretly. She can't do it outright or else they'll take it out on her, but she does it in secret, just kind of trying to help in a way that she can that's not overt. And Sanji tells Reiju that he wants to be a cook. And since Germa finally figured out how Sanji got to the East Blue, is because Germa went to the East Blue, they crossed the red line in order to invade, in order to conquer some more places over there. And Sanji took that as his opportunity to leave, because he's like, if I can escape here, I'm free. I can get away from them. Reiju decides to help him and free Sanji. And Sanji gets to escape and he goes to get the keys to get the freaking helmet off of his head. And his father catches him, but instead of throwing Sanji back into the dungeon, he says, thanks. He's saying, oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate you going out there, most likely dying, because I couldn't kill you. Saying he's sentimental for not disposing of his son. Sir, you locked your son in a dungeon. There's nothing sentimental about you. Basically thanks Sanji for running away because he doesn't want to have anything to do with Sanji, and disowns him right then and there, saying, you better not tell anybody that we're related. I am not your father. Saying that Sanji is his shame. Sanji crying, Reiju hiding, hearing what her father is saying, her crying, and then sending Sanji off in a manner that is very similar to how Saul sent Robin off when she says, the sea's a huge place, someday you'll find people who are good to you. Tell me that's not almost exactly what Saul said to Robin. This hurts so much. And Sanji does leave, and he does find those people just like Robin did. He found his sooner than Robin, obviously. He found Zeph, and Zeph was able to be someone for him, to be an actual father. He's back where he started now, and they fix his face a little bit so that he doesn't meet Pudding with a mangled face because his brothers beat on him so much, which I ain't. And they take off to go have lunch with Big Mom and Pudding. And that's when Luffy, recovered from his nap, so he's no longer huge after eating all those biscuits, sees the carriage that Sanji's in and goes up to greet Sanji. And Luffy jumps on the carriage and says, we've come to get you, Sanji. We've come to bring you back. But Sanji, being trapped in the moment with no other choice, because if he does anything, Zeph's head will fly and he loses his hands. If he loses his hands, he can't even do anything for Luffy anymore, because he can't be the ship's cook without his hands. He can't cook for them. He can't help Luffy in that way anymore. He can't be there in the same capacity that he was. I think Sanji felt like he would lose his place should that happen as well. It wasn't just about him losing his passion and his love for cooking, something that bonded him to his mother, to Zeph, and now to his crew, but something that represented a purpose for him, and in extension his dream of finding the All Blue, a chef's paradise. All of that on the line with these shackles on his wrist, knowing that he could completely lose everything should he rebel. And because he has no choice, he decides to sacrifice himself to this whole plot of his family's and Big Mom, and makes himself as much of a villain as he can for Luffy and Nami, so that they would escape, they would leave. And he does this to push them away, and in doing so, he says exactly what Cracker told Luffy he would say. He says, get lost, you miserable, inferior pirates. Trying to claim his title as a prince, trying to act the way his brothers do, saying that he doesn't want to return to the crew, that he doesn't want to live the life of a pirate, that if it was between them and this life that Big Mom had picked out for him, he would choose the life Big Mom picked out for him. This is what I'm hung up on a little bit. Luffy instantly realizes that Sanji's lying. Sanji is saying all of this, but Luffy knows he doesn't mean a word of it. But Nami believes him. Nami believes what Sanji is doing. When Sanji glares at her for the first time ever, she's so shocked that she thinks that there's no way that he didn't turn his back on them. I would have thought Nami would have had more faith in Sanji. Nami, who stood up for Sanji on Zou and was so anxious to go to him after hearing what he was saying on Zou, hears him say this, something completely opposite of what he said to her back then, and she's like, oh well, he's betrayed us. He's turned on us. I don't get it. Because Luffy, who didn't hear exactly what Sanji said, but heard it secondhand from Nami, can look at Sanji as he is glaring at Luffy, as he is saying all these things and fighting Luffy, and says, no, he doesn't mean a single word of this. He's doing this because he has to. He's not doing this because he wants to. He is sacrificing himself, and I hate it. Luffy gets it automatically. And it just hurts that Nami doesn't. But Luffy, as Sanji is attacking him, Luffy will not fight him. He will not fight Sanji. Sanji continues to tell Luffy to fight, to put his hands up, and Luffy continues to refuse, taking every single hit from Sanji, everything that Sanji throws at him. Nami trying to yell at Sanji to stop because she knows that Luffy is exhausted from his fight in the Seducing Woods, that he's not even fully recovered from that. Luffy telling her to stay out of it because it's a duel. As they're fighting, Sanji and Luffy thinking about him joining the crew, about him talking to Luffy about the all blue, and then when Luffy goes down and Sanji's gonna leave, as like a final, like, as if he's not suffering enough, Nami goes up to Sanji and slaps him across the face, tells him goodbye. She's like, well, I'm sorry we overstepped our bounds. Nami, a character who did the same thing, who was pretending to be part of another crew and pretending to hate Luffy and the others because she was doing what she had to do to protect the people she loved. The same situation is happening with Sanji, and yet she doesn't understand. I don't know why. Well, so much for getting through that without crying. And as he's leaving, Luffy calls out to Sanji, and Sanji is hiding his face away, and Luffy's calling him out. He's saying, what do you mean, inferior pirates? I know you don't mean any of this. I know you don't mean any of what you're saying. He's like, do you think you can get rid of me like this? Like this little attempt, you think that's gonna stop me from coming to get you? I know what you're doing. And then Luffy, and like a parallel to freaking Corazon from Dressrosa and the Bagger of Law, Luffy is shouting out to Sanji saying, you can kick me all you want, but you're the one feeling the pain. And Sanji cries. Oh. And Luffy shutting down Nami after she's telling him, like, look, like, he's betrayed us, he's turned his back on us, let him go. Luffy's not giving up. He's still calling after Sanji, saying that he's gonna stay right there and wait for Sanji, that he's not gonna eat anything, that he would rather sit there and starve than eat anybody else's food. The only food that he's gonna eat is Sanji's. Which is, with the situation of what is potentially being taken away from Sanji, the impact of that Sanji is hearing, it's just even more painful. But the final just blow to the heart is when Luffy screams out to Sanji saying, without your help, I can't become the king of pirates. And he is just devastating. Absolutely devastating. That fight just crushed my soul. Y'all remember back in Water 7 when Usopp fought against Luffy, and I was sobbing over that because I was like, I never want to see this crew fighting amongst itself. I never want to see people walk away from this crew. I don't like that. I don't want to see them fighting against each other like that. And I thought Usopp versus Luffy was going to be one of the most painful fights I'd ever have to witness. This topped that by like spades. This hurt me so much. Not just because Luffy and Sanji are like my two favorite Straw Hats, but because of all the underlying parts of this, that Sanji, who was scorned by his family and just hurt by his family for cooking, versus Luffy, who absolutely loves and adores his cooking and is now proclaiming that he's never gonna eat any other food but his. Sanji, knowing that Luffy knows that he's not meaning anything he's saying, but he's letting it happen anyways, because he recognizes that Sanji doesn't have a choice. And Luffy is saying that he can't become king of the pirates without Sanji, when Sanji knows that's his dream. Basically Luffy's basically telling Sanji, my dream cannot be complete without you in it, without you with me. Which is so painful, and yet Sanji is in a position where he can't do anything about that. He's so torn and so hurt because he's so helpless right now. He can't do anything against his family, against Big Mom. It's like he's a child again, trapped underneath their abuse and criticism, and he's just stuck. He's stronger now, he can fight back now, but that same feeling of helplessness and just being trapped is there. And because now Sanji has those people that Reiju was talking about, because he now has those people who are good to him, who he does care about and love very deeply, but having them being threatened and having them in a position where they could be forcibly taken away from him, and having to make that hard, like, he can't even really make the decision. It's made for him, being stuck in that place where he's having to go along with this to spare them, but knowing what this is going to do for them as well. And it's just, there's no good option. There's no good answer for Sanji. And that's just, I can't talk about it anymore because I'm just so hurt and upset about it. I can't. But the army that Big Mom has sent out because Luffy defeated Cracker is on their way as Sanji gets to Big Mom's palace pretty much. And they have their big lunch with Big Mom and Pudding. Pudding wants to talk to Sanji by himself, so he agrees. Luffy not wanting to leave that spot because he promised Sanji he would stay there. And then this conversation that Sanji has with Pudding, she is acting all nice and sweet where, you know, she seems very concerned about Sanji and whether or not he really wants to go through with the wedding. And Sanji explains the position that he's in, that he really doesn't have a choice. He takes off the mask, literally, for Pudding to show them, like, literally it doesn't matter, like, they're gonna do this to me regardless. This is what my family thinks of me. Don't try to think I'm in some sort of, like, position where I can refuse. I hate that when Sanji is talking about it, describing it, is saying where he's just come back to it all. Saying that he's just come full circle pretty much, that he started out there, the 13 years he had in between was a blessing, and now he's just back to where he started. The self-sacrificial nature that Sanji has is just breaking my heart when he says, in a way, all the people I met are my saviors. I just want to vanish without hurting any of them. Pudding, of course, trying to make him feel better, saying that their marriage won't be a burden to him. And Sanji deciding to just not resist at all and give in to this marriage. And he tells Pudding that he will marry her tomorrow. And Luffy, because he had been so battered and injured from all of his previous fights, he and Nami get defeated and they get captured and brought to Big Mom's palace, and they get put in prison. And these little books that contain real things because of someone's devil fruit powers, which is insane. But then Sanji goes to negotiate with Big Mom for the safe release of Luffy and the others. And Big Mom's like, oh, of course, you're gonna be in my family. We'll let them go. Now like the offenses they have, they're normally so grievous that I would never let them go, but I let them go. But first of all, I think Big Mom was lying to him. Second of all, she worded it way too specifically, saying, I'll let your current companions in the Straw Hat crew leave this island alive. Meaning that, once he's married, they're no longer his current companions, so that means she doesn't have to keep her end of the deal. I could see her doing something like that. She is a pirate after all. And of course, Sanji is just begging for a way and just pleading for a way for his friends to be safe. He's just like, you'll really do that? And in his face saying that he was gonna make her daughter happy. I just can't. But then we get to this room where there are 3 poneglyphs, because Big Mom has 3 poneglyphs in her possession. One is the road poneglyph and the other 2 are just regular poneglyphs, including the one Jinbei had brought to her, so those cover pages that I saw in Dressrosa, they were relevant. He brought the poneglyph to Big Mom. Brook and Pedro come up with the plan where Pedro will be this decoy so that Brook can go in and get copies of all of the poneglyphs to bring back to Robin and Luffy. And as Big Mom is showing off all of these books to the Vinsmokes, showing all of these living things that are trapped inside of them, I think it's Judge who brings up the fact that of all the types of people who live there, all the races of people who live there, giants are not among them. And Big Mom gets really mad at that, but we don't get why. So that's a curious thing. I wanted just to put that in there. I did notice that. But then we get that conversation with Luffy and Big Mom, where Luffy, of course, is just adamant about fighting Big Mom and just getting Sanji back, and Big Mom is just treating him very lightly. She's not really taking him serious at first. And she mentions the gold brought back from Fishman Island that had the Tamate box in it, which I don't remember exactly what's in it, but I know it's not treasure. I know it's something bad, because I was like, oh my gosh, when Big Mom gets that, that's going to be bad. So that's about to happen at the wedding tomorrow, which is going to throw a lot of things off kilter just because of what's in the Tamate box. So that gets brought up. The topic of Lola gets brought up, where Nami talks about how she got the fever card from Lola, and Big Mom basically saying how Lola was not considered one of her daughters because she refused a marriage and ran off. So she's kind of like disowned Lola in a way, but Lola doesn't realize that. Lola still thinks that Big Mom loves her, which is really, really sad. And Luffy calls Big Mom out. I love what he says. When Luffy says, that's a stupid story. It was Lola who didn't get married, and it's you who failed to become king of the pirates. I love it. And then he's like, yes, here I am picking another fight with you. I'm not backing down just because you're one of the 4 emperors. Basically saying that they're gonna win. And as that is happening, you get cut over to Sanji, and he's just like holding himself, saying and just begging for everyone to leave. He's like, please leave. Please, everyone, please fall back. Just get out of here. He's doing everything he can to save the people he loves, and it's just killing him. And not only that, he's having to hype himself up to put this facade on of being really happy and excited to get married, where he's like, oh, I can't be sad around Pudding, that's not fair to her. I can't make her sad. Let's be really happy. Let's go all for it. I have to bring her really good gifts. I'm gonna cook her dinner. I'm gonna bring her flowers. I'm gonna make her really happy. The lengths this man goes through to just keep himself positive, to protect others, is just insane. Get Brook's Soul King performance as he's going in before they all realize that it is a decoy and Pedro's still out there, but Brook has locked himself in so nobody else can get in, and he is just taking care of business. That Soul King performance that he gives, so cool. But then we get Pudding going to visit Luffy in prison. Oh, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to make it, and acting all apologetic and lighthearted and very sympathetic towards them about the whole situation, saying that she's not going to marry Sanji, and then whispering something in Luffy's ear before leaving and saying goodbye. Pedro giving more of his history of how he was a pirate captain and ended up losing, and not only did he lose like 40 years off of his life, he also gouged out his own eye to make up for lost time, or to make up for like I think 10 years of it. But he also has a lot of loyalty for the Straw Hats. He believes in Luffy and the others, and that is why he was able to come back, because he has this intense loyalty to them, saying that he has no intention of making it out of there alive, which I'm really hoping is not true. But he is very convinced to lay down his life for the Straw Hats, but he's not ready to die yet. He still has a job to do. And you have Sanji making dinner for Pudding, and he has dinner and he's bringing her flowers. You have Luffy in the prison struggling so hard to get out of the change that he's willing to rip his hands off, which the parallels to the whole hand ripping off thing is just like, okay, I get it. But it's like he is struggling so hard that it is like ripping off his hands, and he doesn't care. He just wants to get out of there. And I love what he says when he tells Nami, while we sit here wondering who's gonna save us, we're losing everything. And then Big Mom kills us in the end. When he's saying we're losing everything, knowing exactly what Pudding told him later, he's talking about Sanji. Losing Sanji. Saying we'll lose everything. I mean, it could also mean, like, the chance to get the poneglyphs, but, like, besides that, he's talking about Sanji. The love that Luffy has for Sanji, we saw it in Zou, but it's so strong in this arc. He really does love Sanji like Sanji is his own brother. And, just the way he's acting, this bizarre actions that he's taking, what he's willing to give up is a little, I'm not saying it's the same, so don't come at me, but I'm saying it's similar to how he was acting when he was trying to get to Ace, because he knows what's at stake now if he doesn't get to Sanji in time, just like he knew what was at stake if he didn't get to Ace on time. These Straw Hats are a family, and it's moments like this where it really, really shows how much of a family they are and how much they care for one another, especially in regards to Luffy and how he sees his crewmates. But then Sanji finds Pudding torturing Reiju with this freaking third eye on her forehead, insulting Sanji. She had all of them fooled from the very beginning, all the Straw Hats, everybody, the Vinsmokes. They had this planned all along. This freaking red wedding from Game of Thrones style, it's planning a red wedding pretty much. Like, they're planning to kill everybody at this wedding. Like, excuse you? This isn't Game of Thrones. Can you calm down? And that's what she told Luffy, was that, oh, well, we're not getting married because I'm gonna kill him tomorrow. She was like, well, he'll be getting riddled with bullets courtesy of me tomorrow. Ha ha ha. And that's why Luffy is working so hard to get out of these freaking chains. Pudding is just like on full-blown psychotic of, oh, well, Big Mom only wants the Vinsmokes for their scientific prowess. After that, she wants to get rid of y'all, planning on killing all of the Vinsmokes at this wedding. And Sanji overhears everything. The looks on his face as he is listening to every single thing that Pudding is saying, basically mocking. I'm so mad. She's making fun of him. She is making fun of everything he stood for, his resolve, what he is willing to sacrifice for the people he loves, everything that he is going through, his choice, his actions, just basically mocking his entire existence, making jokes about what face he's gonna make whenever she pulls the gun on him, and how he's gonna react whenever she starts shooting him. And Sanji's listening to all of this. He's hearing all of this, and then she calls him a failure, which is something he's heard from his family his whole life, and then to hear it from somebody else who he was thinking was going to be a partner that he was going to have for the rest of his life, to hear her mocking him, calling him a failure, and saying, well, at least give me a proper person, at least give me a proper prince to marry. And then Sanji's face, this, I just can't, that face just of just being utterly broken by everything that she's saying, because hearing what she says just demolishes everything he was trying to do for his family, for these Straw Hats, for Zeb. It threw all of that back in his face. Basically said, you're completely worthless. You've done nothing good. Everything that you've done has amounted to nothing. You're gonna die wasting your life, not protecting anyone. Everything you've done is pointless. Like, that is, it's so crushing. And the entire time as he's listening to her, he's trying to get the lighter to work too. He keeps clicking it and he can't get the lighter working. And then he just, it's like his last hope of clinging onto this facade he's been forcing himself to put up so that he can stay positive about this situation. And it's like that facade won't click into place, and it just breaks down. And he just breaks down, and the facade is gone, and he just can't hide it anymore. He can't hide how sad and helpless and just broken he is by this whole situation, and I hate it. But then Brooke comes in, and I love Brooke. He understands Sanji. He understands where Sanji's coming from. When Big Mom comes in to confront him while he's getting the sketches of the poneglyphs, he confronts Big Mom, and he says, the thing about Sanji is he's very kind-hearted, so I knew he would not return to us no matter what trap it is you set up for him. His kindness knows no bounds. Once he's made up his mind to sacrifice himself for someone, he will not change his ways. I mean, thank you, Brooke. Thank you. He gets it. Luffy gets it. Why doesn't Nami? That bothers me to no end. Brooke gets it, and he knows, he believes fully in Sanji, but he also fully believes in Luffy and knows that Luffy will not let Sanji do this to himself. He knows that Sanji, he knows that Luffy will get Sanji back, and because he believes in Luffy, because he believes in Sanji, he is determined to get these road poneglyphs for them, saying that even if they couldn't get Sanji, he doesn't need to blame himself for them going after him, because they'll have gained something, the poneglyphs, from being there, so it won't be his fault. He doesn't need to blame himself. I love Brooke so much. This confrontation he has with Big Mom is so good. I love it. And Big Mom's like, oh, well, you're planning to die here, or something like that. Or saying like, oh, well, you're planning on no one dying. And Brooke says, young lady, which I think is so funny that he's calling Big Mom young lady, says, what kind of idiot draws up plans with the expectation of dying? But we get removing Reiju's memory of everything that she said. She just did it for fun to torture Reiju, I guess, because that's just what she wants to do. But Sanji fills Reiju back in after he finds her, after, you know, she gets hurt and everything. He fills Reiju back in on everything that happened, everything that Pudding said. And I hate this because when Sanji realizes it and his hand, like, realizes that everything he's done has been for nothing, and he puts his head in his hands and he said, all this time I assumed that if I accepted the marriage it would save Luffy and the others, and it turns out that was never in the cards to begin with. I thought I could just sacrifice myself and everything would be perfectly fine. And Reiju hears him say this and says, I think Germa needs to be destroyed. Including her, even though Sanji doesn't want her hurt because she did help him in the past, but she's like, my hands are stained with blood too, I'm not a saint. Then she explains the whole situation with their mother, which she tried to reject Judge and go against his plans of making their children just mindless machines, ended up poisoning herself to try to fight back against the blood manipulation thing. And Sanji was the result of that. Sanji being human was the result of all of her efforts, of everything that she did. Sanji being a human being was his mother's greatest accomplishment. It might have been his father's biggest failure, but it was his mother's success and pride and joy. Reiju reassures Sanji that he is making the right choice, that she's urging him to leave with the Straw Hats, to leave with them, to leave all of them behind. And she's talking about what his mother gave and everything. She said, "Mother gave her life in resistance to protect you and the emotions you were born with. That's what you stand for, Sanji. It's why you were born, kinder and gentler than anyone." Part I'm ending at is Jinbei, thank goodness, comes in, saves Luffy and Nami, frees them, and now Luffy is desperate to get to Sanji. That is where I ended, because my gosh, that was so emotional. I'm crying for literally every other chapter with Sanji. There's still so much I could say, but this is so long and my battery's about to die, so I'm not going to. This arc is painful. I am hurting so much with this arc, but I want to know where it's going, because I want Sanji back, and I want his family to pay, and I want Pudding to pay. I'm so sad. I'm so sad, and I don't know how else to feel other than just sad and angry right now. And it's just overwhelming a little bit. I hope you liked this review. It was a lot of crying, a lot of tears, a lot of anger, but I hope you liked this review. I'm really anxious to see where it goes from here, but be ready for my next Whole Cake Island review. It'll be out next week. I'll do the next part of this and we'll go from there. Be sure to check out all of my other videos. If you haven't seen the other videos I've posted in October, be sure to go check them out. I have my Harry Potter readathons up. I have some Halloween recommendations up. So if you haven't seen those videos, along with the Zoe arc review, if you haven't seen those, please go watch them. I would really appreciate that. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time, scholars. Bye.